Welcome to Retirement Ramblings. I'm Scott, and today is day 270 on my countdown to retirement. So, today, before I jump into the main topic of the day, which is updating Boldin to reflect changes around the Trump tariff policies and what that impact will be to my retirement plan, I started off my day canning the chicken broth that I made overnight. So I said I took a single roasted chicken. After I deboned that, I took the carcass, put it into a crock pot, let it run overnight, and I was able to generate 3 quarts of chicken broth from that single carcass. So I took care of that because my wife hates the smell of that, especially when it's bubbling away overnight. So I wanted to get that cleaned up and discarded first thing this morning before she got out of bed. And then her coffee smell could overpower the smell of the chicken broth that had been cooking. So then I got into Boldin, and first I updated all of my current balances. Then I updated all of my expenses that have been that I've gotten updated costs for 2025. So that includes things like car insurance, homeowners insurance. We happen to have a timeshare, the maintenance fee on the timeshare, costs for electric or gas, in the utility sector, anything that might have gone up in 2025 versus what our average fee was in 2024. I put all of that into Boldin. And then I had gone out and first I was looking on LinkedIn to see if anybody was posting anything about any of the tariff and the impact that they projected to inflation. I did see, I think it was Sarah Malik had put out an estimate that it was going to be about 2% increase is what they're projecting to increase on core PCE, and core PCE is currently running around 2.8%. So that brings it up to 4.8%. And then I used Grok and Perplexity, the AI assistants, and asked similar questions like, given Trump's tariffs that were announced on, April 2nd, what is the projected impact to global inflation, not just the U.S., but global inflation, as well as, GDP, et cetera. So I got a variety of answers back, but they all basically came within, 1 to 2% increase in anticipated inflation. So based on that, I went into Boldin and I updated my rate assumptions. So I had originally used 3.8% as my optimistic inflation rate, and a pessimistic number at 6.61%. So I updated that so that my optimistic rate was 4.8%, which may sound high, but from everything I've read, it doesn't really seem like it's going to be high. And then my pessimistic one I increased to 7.61, and then the average between the two of those, for which Boldin automatically calculates and puts into your average plan, is 6.205%. And then on medical inflation, I increased that to 6.22% optimistically, 10.56 pessimistically, and then Boldin calculated 8.39% as the average. And then for Social Security COLA, I didn't make any changes. I'm still assuming optimistically that it'll be 2.6%, pessimistically 0, average being 1.3. And the reason I didn't associate the optimistic percentage to be the same general inflation that was 4.8 is because I don't expect that the CPI necessarily, which is what they use for the Social Security COLA calculation, and it runs from October 1st through September 30th of each year, and that's what they use to do the calculations, I don't think that it will match what the real inflation rate is. And so I made it, I kept it lower or more conservative. And then I also left the housing appreciation rate unchanged, which for me, I'm using 4.74% as my optimistic. I'm using negative 1.2% as my pessimistic. And then the average that Boldin calculates is 1.77%. And then I also made the assumption from a tax perspective, even though I know everybody expects that Trump will be able to not only get the current tax deductions that we have that were implemented in 2018 renewed at the end of this year, but also be able to do additional tax cuts. Well, for my retirement plan, I'm assuming that we're going to revert back to the 2017 tax rates. We'll see, but I didn't want to go down that optimistic path because everybody was super optimistic about what was going to be happening at the start of the Trump presidency with deregulation and the tax cuts, and they thought the tariffs are going to be topped to 10%, and so everybody was wrong. And so, therefore, again, I don't want to be caught off guard. So I'd rather overestimate my taxes than underestimate. So that's what I'm doing for that. And then across the board, I went through all of my large ticket items that I've put in Boldin that are going to be one-time expenses, or they might be multiple time expenses, but there's long periods of time in between each expense, like 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, things like that. So because of the Trump tariffs, and for simplicity, I use 25%, which is what he's using on automotive. And, I don't know, again, I think it works out to be like 34% on China. I forget what all the other ones are. It's high on Vietnam, it's high on Cambodia. So I just a flat 25%. And I basically took any of my key items and increased the cost by 25% over what I had previously had in the plan. So as an example, for replacing a water heater, I increased the price to $18.75 once every 10 years. For an HVAC system, I set the price at $10,625 every 12 years. For us, we moved in, the house was built in 2016. So I'm expecting to have to replace the major appliances. That's refrigerator, range, oven, microwave, dishwasher, disposal, roughly after 15 years. So probably 2031. And I budgeted $14,688 for replacing those appliances. And then my wife currently has an SUV. We just paid that off, but I'm expecting to keep that car for 12 years, and then maybe we'll buy a used car, but I budgeted for a new one. And so I increased the cost to $56,250 because when we got her current SUV, it was around $40,000. So based on the numbers with that uplift, that's where it would end up. And then house painting, which we have to do every 7 to 10 years, I increased that price to $66.88. I just had it done this past year, I said, which was like $53.50. So, and then a new roof after 20 years using $15,625. So then I went into all of the bucket list trips that, I'm expecting to take over our lifetime once both of us are retired. And I've got budgeted 12 what I'll call bucket list trips. And though, again, I went out, looked at the cost of what, bucket list trips are currently running. There was a giant increase between 2024 and 2025. It was over 26% increase in what the average cost of the travel on kind of a bucket list type of an item. And they gave, specific examples like spending 12 days going to Japan and going to Tokyo and a variety of different cities and, minimal actual excursions, but just the flights to get there, the hotel accommodations, food, etc. They gave specific examples, and using that one as an example, they averaged $303 a day if you're going to Japan. In Norway, if you go do a trip there, again, it's working out to be like $571 a day for the same kind of thing. So ballpark, people were budgeting, $5,000 to $10,000 a person, and roughly $7,500 a person if you're doing just a 10-day trip. So using all those numbers, I went back into my estimates, and I've averaged out a cost at $16,917 for is what's blended. Sometimes it's big more, sometimes less, but the average over the 12 trips works out to that number. And then I set aside, another bucket of $31,500 for travel, and that is just miscellaneous trips. Could be seeing family or friends, or just something that we want to go do that's not a bucket list. Like, it's a smaller cost, much smaller cost item. All of those would be $2,500 or less kind of trips. But I wanted to have some miscellaneous bucket for different trips, like when we have to go at Christmas time to visit my son and his family, things like that. So I budgeted that. And then I also went in and made sure that on healthcare, I budgeted that for my health, I'm going to assume that I'm going to be on original Medicare with a Medigap policy and drug plan and a high premium. And so based on selecting that choice, Boldin's estimating that over my lifetime, post-retirement, the cost will be $286,168. And then for my wife, assuming that we use Medicare Advantage, which is what she currently has, and that she stays with that with a medium premium, Boldin estimates her lifetime healthcare costs in retirement to be $234,862. And then we both have long-term care policies that we've had for quite a while, and I was really disappointed to see that Boldin, no matter, even though you selected the option that says yes, we have long-term care policies, they never ask you how much your policies will pay or anything. They just make an assumption that near the end of your life, you're still going to need to pay incremental dollars. So in this case, they've added $77,351 in expense in the out years of my plan as follows. So $4,903 when I turn 88 and my wife's 94, $17,515 when I'm 89 and my wife's 95, $21,068 when I'm 90 and my wife's 96, and then $19,546 when I'm 91, my wife has already passed on, and then $14,319 when I turn 92 before I pass. And then they don't allow me to exclude, like I said, those costs. And currently, my policy would pay $6,083 a month till I die, so unlimited in long-term care. And then my wife's would pay $7,300 per month. So she gets $240 a day. I get $200 a day. I don't understand why Boldin keeps adding the cost, but anyway, they're all the changes that I made in Boldin. The net out of all of it is when I made all the changes and then I went and ran all the Monte Carlo simulations, Boldin still gives me a very high probability of success for my plan. The only difference really is I don't have as much money to leave as a legacy as I did prior to these changes. So, I mean, that number dropped substantially. But I do get, according to them, I would be able to I wouldn't outlive my money. assuming that my wife lives to 96 and I live to 92. Um, so at least it made me feel a little bit better that there's still a high probability, even with these changes and the reductions that I've seen over the last week in my finances, that we still have a good shot uh, of successfully navigating. And obviously, I can cut back on trips. I can do things over time because a retirement plan is just a snapshot in time, and you make adjustments as things happen. And the old saying, we plan, God laughs. Um, you know, things will happen as they happen, and you'll just have to accommodate and adjust and adapt to what ends up happening. So took care of that. Then made a Costco run because I needed eggs and butter and toilet paper, and eggs were $6.49 for 18 at Costco, and you could get up to 3 packages of eggs, which at least in my area, that price um, is good. I mean, if you go to Costco, sorry, if you go to Kroger or Publix or Sprouts or any of the other places, the cost per dozen is a lot more money, and the Costco price nets out to 4.33 a dozen. So it's fine. I used to be able to get pastured eggs for that versus just regular eggs, but not anymore. Just getting pastured eggs is hard enough. And then they had Charmin Ultra Soft 30 roll package at Costco that was on sale, and it ended today, and you'd save $6 off for a package. So I ended up getting us 2 packages. So I have a storage closet, so I just put one of the 30 packs in there, and it's just easier to, well, I wanted to save the money, so I can easily store it. And then lastly, before the end of today, my Photoshop subscription expired. I didn't want to renew it. It was going to be several $100s. So I went out and searched for, what's kind of the best free photo editing software. Came back that GIMP 3 is highly recommended. So I downloaded it, installed on my computer. The interface is similar to Photoshop. So, while I still will have a learning curve, it was, reasonably close. It doesn't have all of the bells and whistles, obviously, of the paid product, Photoshop, but, it's good enough to be able to, make thumbnail images as an example, which is what I used it for. So I still need to learn how to, how to use it more effectively than I did today. But at least I was able to use it to create the thumbnail that you saw, to click on this video. So that's everything that I worked on today. Love to get your feedback on my assumptions, my changes relative to what I did in Boldin, whether you think it's too conservative, not conservative enough, what have you. So if you would, leave some comments down below or drop me an email at myretirementramblings@gmail.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great evening, and until tomorrow, take care.